Welcome to a mysterious rainy night. Let the gentle sound of rain soothe your soul and guide you into a state of relaxation. Tonight, we embark on an ancient tale, a journey filled with mysteries, leading to the land of Transylvania, where darkness reigns and chilling secrets await. Imagine yourself sitting in a cozy room, the fire crackling in the hearth, a book open on the table, and rain pattering softly against the window. In this serene atmosphere, the story of Dracula comes to life, following the footsteps of Jonathan Harker, a young traveler venturing into a world that will forever change his destiny. Now, lean back, let the rain and the narration entwine, and immerse yourself in the realm of legends, where reality and the supernatural blend together. Tonight, we unveil the mysteries of Dracula's castle. Are you ready? Dracula, Chapter 1, Jonathan Harker's Journal, May 3rd. My journey to Transylvania has begun. I, Jonathan Harker, a solicitor from England, have been tasked with traveling to meet Count Dracula, a nobleman who wishes to purchase property in London. My route has taken me through Munich, Vienna, and Budapest before finally arriving in Bistritz, a quaint town nestled in the Carpathian Mountains. The deeper I travel into this unfamiliar land, the more I feel as though I am leaving behind the modern world and stepping into an ancient one. The weather has been bright and warm, but as I near my destination, the landscapes grow more rugged and wild, with dense forests and jagged mountain peaks dominating the horizon. There is something about this place that feels untouched by time, yet it stirs a sense of unease within me. At the Golden Krone Hotel. When I arrived at the Golden Krone Hotel in Bistritz, I found a letter waiting for me, written in a precise yet old-fashioned hand. It was from Count Dracula himself, instructing me to rest for the night and prepare for the next stage of my journey, as his carriage would take me to his castle the following evening. The innkeeper and his wife were kind, but seemed unusually nervous when they learned where I was going. An older woman, hearing my conversation, approached me, her face lined with worry. In broken English, mixed with German, she pleaded with me not to continue my journey. Her voice was trembling as she asked, "Must you go?" "Oh, young sir, must you go?" I tried to reassure her, but her fear was palpable. She asked if I knew what day it was. When I replied, "The 4th of May," she corrected me urgently, saying, "It is the eve of St. George's Day. Do you not know that tonight, when the clock strikes midnight, all the evil things in the world will hold sway?" Her words unsettled me, though I did my best to hide it. I told her I had important business and could not delay my journey. She fell to her knees, begging me to reconsider or at least wait a day. When I refused, she rose, dried her tears, and removed a crucifix from her neck. "Take this," she said, placing it around my neck, "for your mother's sake." Though I was uncomfortable accepting such a gift, my upbringing as an English Protestant taught me to regard such objects as superstitious. I did not want to offend her. Her genuine concern touched me, and I wore the crucifix, feeling a strange mixture of unease and gratitude. A growing sense of foreboding. As I wait for the coach that will take me closer to Dracula's castle, I feel a lingering sense of dread. The old woman's warnings and the mysterious traditions of this place weigh heavily on my mind. The crucifix still hangs around my neck, and though I am not one to believe in such things, its presence is oddly comforting. If anything should happen to me, I hope this journal will one day reach Mina, my beloved fiancée. The sound of the coach pulling into the inn breaks my thoughts. My journey continues. Chapter 2, 5th of May, Castle Dracula. I arrived at Castle Dracula late in the evening, exhausted from my journey. The carriage had made its way up the steep, winding mountain pass under a heavy veil of darkness. As we neared the gates, I could feel the driver's unease growing. He frequently crossed himself and muttered under his breath in a language I did not understand. The castle loomed ahead, a dark silhouette against the night sky. At the gates, the driver unloaded my belongings quickly and hastened away without a word. I was left alone before the towering iron gates of this ancient place. For a moment, I hesitated, my courage faltering, but the great door swung open before I could make a decision. Standing there, holding a lamp, was a tall man dressed entirely in black. His face was pale, his nose aquiline, and his lips thin and red. His eyes burned with a strange light that seemed to pierce through me. He stepped forward and spoke in flawless English. "Welcome to my house. Enter freely and of your own will." His voice was deep and resonant, but something in his tone sent a chill down my spine. He took my hand in greeting, and I was struck by the iciness of his touch. Yet, he carried my luggage with ease, his movements graceful but unnervingly strong. We entered the castle through a large vaulted hallway. Inside, the air was heavy with the smell of dust and age. The Count led me to a grand dining room where a fire roared in the hearth, casting flickering shadows on the stone walls. A table was laid out with an impressive feast, though I noticed my host did not partake. When I inquired, he simply smiled and said, "I have already dined." As I ate, he engaged me in conversation. His knowledge of England was extensive, and he seemed particularly curious about London. He asked about its streets, its people, and even the smallest details of daily life there. I could not help but feel that his interest was more than casual, though he was charming and polite throughout. After the meal, he showed me to my room. It was comfortably furnished with a large bed and a collection of books in various languages. He wished me a restful night and departed, closing the heavy door behind him. I was grateful for the comfort of the bed, but found sleep elusive. Outside, the wolves howled, their cries echoing through the vast emptiness of the mountains. The sound was both haunting and strangely thrilling, as if the wilderness itself was alive with dark intent. 7. May, Castle Dracula. I have now spent 2 days here, and my initial impressions of the Count have shifted. He remains polite and attentive, but there is something undeniably peculiar about him. He does not eat or drink in my presence, and I have not seen him during daylight hours. I spend my days preparing documents related to the purchase of Carfax Abbey, the property the Count intends to acquire in England. He is meticulous in his questions, asking for detailed descriptions of the building's layout, its proximity to other estates, and even the surrounding soil. At the time, I thought his inquiries odd but harmless. Now, I am not so sure. The castle itself is an enigma. I have attempted to explore it, but many doors are locked, and those that are open lead only to vast, empty corridors. The windows offer views of the surrounding wilderness, but the sheer cliffs below make any thought of escape impossible. 12. May, Castle Dracula. Something happened last night that has shaken me deeply. Unable to sleep, I wandered the castle halls and came upon a window overlooking the courtyard. There, I saw the Count crawling down the sheer face of the castle wall like a lizard. His hands and feet gripped the stone as if it were a flat surface. The sight was unnatural, defying everything I knew to be possible. I retreated to my room, my mind racing. What kind of man or creature is this Count Dracula? 15 May, Castle Dracula. I am now certain that I am a prisoner here. The Count has made no mention of when I might leave, and I have found no means of escape. My attempts to confront him are met with polite evasions, and his demeanor, though calm, carries an undertone of menace. The old woman's warnings from Bistritz echo in my mind. I clutch the crucifix she gave me like a lifeline, though I am unsure if it can protect me from whatever evil resides here. As I write these words, I feel the walls of the castle closing in around me. My isolation is complete, and I cannot shake the sense that I am being watched. The Count, with his strange habits and unnatural abilities, is no ordinary man. What his true intentions are, I cannot yet fathom, but I fear I am ensnared in something far darker than I could have ever imagined. Chapter 3, 5th May, Castle Dracula. I have arrived at the castle. I can hardly describe the place. It stands high above a deep, dark ravine with a river running through it. The road leading up to the castle is narrow and winding, almost as if it's been carved into the side of the mountain itself. When I first saw it, I felt a shiver run down my spine. The walls of the castle rise steeply, covered in a dark, weathered stone. There's a sense of ancient decay about the place, and yet it has a certain grim grandeur. It looks as though it has been abandoned for centuries, and yet there's a faint sense of life in its walls. When we reached the castle gates, the driver didn't say a word. He simply opened the door for me, gestured to the castle, and then left, driving off without another word. I was left standing there, staring at the towering structure, wondering if I had made a terrible mistake. I entered the castle, and it felt as though the air grew colder with every step. I was greeted by Count Dracula himself. He is an imposing figure, tall with sharp features and piercing eyes. His expression was kindly, though his presence was unsettling. He greeted me warmly and ushered me inside with a strange sense of urgency. The castle is vast, much larger than I had anticipated, and it is filled with dark corridors and winding staircases. The decor is old-fashioned, heavy, and dark, filled with tapestries and paintings. Everything is shrouded in shadow, and the air is thick with dust. As I was shown to my room, I noticed that the windows are locked and barred with heavy curtains drawn over them. When I asked the Count about it, he merely smiled and said, "For your safety, of course." I am not sure what to make of all this. I have been given no clear instructions about my work here, and Count Dracula seems to be a man of few words, speaking in riddles rather than direct answers. I've also begun to notice strange things about him. His eyes, which seem to glow with an unnatural intensity, and his strange gestures. I feel a sense of unease growing within me, and yet I am determined to stay. This is a matter of business, and I cannot let my own fears or doubts cloud my judgment. Later that night, I have just retired to my room, and I must admit that I am unsettled. The castle is completely silent, save for the faint sounds of wind howling outside. I attempted to rest, but sleep seems to elude me. There is something deeply unnerving about the stillness here. I can feel eyes on me, though when I look around, there is no one there. In the hallway outside, I heard strange noises, the faintest echoes of footsteps that seem to belong to no one. I wonder if I am merely imagining things, but the feeling of being watched is overwhelming. I will try to sleep again. Tomorrow, I hope to learn more about my task here and what is expected of me. I must stay focused and not let my nerves get the better of me. Tomorrow promises more mysteries, and I must be prepared for whatever comes next. Chapter 4, Jonathan Harker's Journal. 6 May, Castle Dracula. I have been here now for several days, and the sense of unease I feel continues to grow. Count Dracula has been a strange host, courteous yet distant. He is an enigmatic figure, always polite but rarely engaging in any real conversation. At first I thought that perhaps he was simply a private man, but now I wonder if there is something more to his behavior. The Count rarely speaks of his past or of his country. When I try to inquire, he brushes aside my questions with vague answers or changes the subject. It seems he enjoys discussing the customs of England more than those of his own homeland. Yesterday I asked him about the history of the castle, and he answered only that it had been in his family for generations. Beyond that, he gave no details. I have come to dread the nights here. It is not merely the solitude, but the strange, eerie sounds that seem to drift through the castle's stone walls. The wind outside howls constantly, but sometimes I hear other noises. Faint whispers and soft footfalls in the corridors. I've tried to dismiss it as the workings of an old building, but I cannot shake the feeling that something is lurking in the shadows. The days are no better. My attempts to explore the castle are met with reluctance from the Count. Whenever I try to venture outside, he warns me against it, saying that the weather can change rapidly in the mountains and that it is dangerous to travel far. He seems to want to keep me confined within the castle, and though he assures me I am safe, I cannot help but feel trapped. Today, I ventured into the castle's library, and while I was there, I noticed something unsettling. The books are old, dusty, and written in languages I cannot understand. But more disturbing still were the books on the walls, a strange collection of texts about the occult, dark rituals, and vampire lore. Some of them were ancient, their leather covers cracked and faded, while others were more recent, though still unsettling. I couldn't help but feel as though the Count was watching me as I looked through the library. There was a strange tension in the air, as if he was waiting for me to uncover something, yet he said nothing. His cold, penetrating gaze seemed to follow me wherever I went. I could not wait to leave that room. This evening after dinner, I sat by the window of my room, staring out into the blackness of the night. The castle is perched high on the cliffs, overlooking a vast, dark forest. The moon was full, casting an eerie glow over the landscape. It was then that I noticed something odd, movement, far in the distance. It was a shadowy figure, moving rapidly through the trees. At first, I thought it was some kind of animal, but the figure seemed too large, too fast to be anything but human. I called for the Count to come, but when he arrived, the figure was gone. He only smiled and reassured me that it was nothing, perhaps a wolf or some other creature of the night. But the look in his eyes was not comforting. It was as though he knew more than he was letting on. I cannot shake the feeling that I am being watched, even when I am alone. There is a tension in the air that I cannot explain. Tomorrow I intend to ask the Count more questions, but I am beginning to feel that I may not like the answers. For now, I must rest, though I fear that sleep will not come easily in this strange and unsettling place. The wind is howling louder now, and I hear the same strange noises again. I pray that I am simply imagining things, but something tells me I am not. I must stay focused and try not to let my nerves get the better of me, but I cannot deny that my fear is growing. Chapter 5, Jonathan Harker's Journal. 12th of May, Castle Dracula. I have been here for over a week now, and my sense of isolation has deepened. The Count is as strange as ever, and I feel increasingly uneasy in his presence. It is not only the silence of the castle that unnerves me, but also the oppressive atmosphere that seems to hang over everything. The walls of this place seem to close in on me, and I feel as though I am constantly being watched, even when I am alone. Today, I had another strange encounter with Count Dracula. I had been working in my room, writing up my notes, when he appeared unexpectedly at the door. His sudden presence startled me, but he greeted me with his usual polite manner. However, there was something off about his demeanor. His eyes seemed to gleam in a way that made me uncomfortable, and his voice had an odd, almost hypnotic quality. The Count told me that he had arranged for me to leave the castle soon, as he sensed I was anxious to return home. His words sounded genuine, but there was something in his tone that made me question his motives. I could not shake the feeling that he wanted to keep me here for some reason, and I couldn't help but wonder why he had allowed me to believe that I would be free to go at any time. There is something elusive about him, and I do not entirely trust his intentions. As we spoke, I tried to gather some information about the surrounding area, hoping to learn more about this strange land. The Count spoke of the land in such glowing terms, describing the mountains and forests with great pride. But when I pressed him about any nearby villages or towns, he gave vague answers. He mentioned something about the wild places where few people lived, and warned me that it was not safe to travel far in the region. His words felt like a subtle warning, and I couldn't help but feel that there was something more behind his words than he was letting on. Later, as I attempted to write more of my journal, I decided to explore the castle further against the Count's wishes. I wanted to understand more about this place and perhaps find something that would shed light on the strange behavior of the Count. The night was quiet, with only the wind whispering through the cracks in the stone walls. The corridors were long and dark, and as I wandered deeper into the castle, I noticed the absence of servants. There was no one to be found, and I began to feel a strange, overwhelming sense of isolation. At last, I stumbled upon a small room, hidden away from the rest of the castle. It appeared to be a private study of some kind, filled with ancient books and scrolls. The room was cold, and the air smelled of dust and mildew. I carefully examined some of the texts, but they were written in languages I could not decipher. Among them, I found a few volumes that seemed to be of a darker nature, books on the occult, dark rituals, and vampires. I was startled, unsure of what to make of these texts, but I knew one thing for certain. Count Dracula had an interest in things that were not natural. Suddenly, I heard a noise from behind me. I spun around, but the room was empty. I could feel my heart pounding in my chest, and I quickly left the room, feeling an overwhelming sense of dread. As I returned to my own quarters, I found the Count waiting for me, as though he had known exactly where I had been. His cold, penetrating gaze met mine, and he simply smiled, as if he was aware of what I had discovered. That night, I could not sleep. The strange sounds continued, echoing through the castle, footsteps in the halls, faint whispers in the wind. And then, just as I was drifting off, I felt a presence in the room, something cold and unnatural. I sat up quickly, but there was nothing there. My room was empty. Yet the sensation of being watched, of being trapped, lingered. Tomorrow I will attempt to confront the Count about the strange things I have found. I am beginning to wonder if he is hiding something far darker than I can comprehend. My stay in this castle has taken a turn for the worse, and I am beginning to fear that I may never leave this place. But I must find answers, and I must uncover the truth. 14 May, Castle Dracula. The last few days have been strange. The Count seems to be avoiding me, and I have been left to my own devices. I have tried to keep my mind occupied, but I cannot shake the feeling that something is terribly wrong. There is no escaping the oppressive atmosphere that surrounds me here. I fear that I am losing my grip on reality. I must be cautious. The Count is watching me, and I am certain that he knows more than he lets on. But I must find a way to escape this place before it is too late. Chapter 6. Jonathan Harker's Journal. 19 May, Castle Dracula. I feel as though I am losing my mind. The days have blended together in a haze of confusion and fear. Time here in the castle seems to pass differently. Hours stretch into what feels like endless days, and nights are filled with strange sounds and unsettling noises. The weather has taken a turn for the worse, with heavy storms and an unnerving chill hanging in the air. Since my last entry, I have tried to make sense of my situation. There is something wrong about this place, and I am beginning to see just how isolated I truly am. The Count seems to be growing more distant with each passing day, though he still makes regular appearances. However, he is always so odd in his manner, his movements deliberate, his eyes piercing. His gaze unnerves me, as if he knows more about me than I care to admit. I continue to search for a way out of this place, but I am thwarted at every turn. I've been trying to find an exit from the castle to no avail. The vast halls seem endless, and the castle itself feels like a labyrinth. Every door I open leads to another dark, deserted room, and every window shows nothing but a fog that seems to stretch into infinity. Today, I was once again on the hunt for a way out when I encountered the Count in the corridor. His appearance startled me, as he was not the man I remembered from before. His face was pale, and his eyes were wide, almost glowing, as though something unnatural had taken hold of him. He seemed agitated, but he remained polite, asking if I had everything I needed. His demeanor was odd, as if he was trying to mask something dark beneath his calm exterior. I tried to speak with him, to ask him more about his strange behavior and my increasingly uncomfortable situation. I attempted to bring up the topic of my departure, but he simply smiled that cold, strange smile of his and told me that everything would be arranged soon. His words offered no real comfort, and I felt a deep unease settle in my chest. I had no idea what he meant by soon, and I couldn't shake the feeling that he was delaying my release on purpose. The next few hours were a blur. I walked the halls aimlessly, trying to clear my mind, but the strange occurrences began to multiply. As I passed one of the great, towering mirrors in the hallway, I glimpsed something out of the corner of my eye, something moving in the reflection, something that was not my own. I turned quickly, but the hallway was empty. The image had vanished as swiftly as it had appeared, leaving me questioning whether it was real or just my overactive imagination. But it wasn't just the mirrors. The castle itself seemed to be alive with an unnatural presence. I heard footsteps in the halls when no one was there, and sometimes when I woke in the middle of the night, I could swear I heard soft whispers in the darkness. The castle seemed to have a life of its own, one that was suffocating and oppressive. I grew desperate. I decided to try and find some clues, anything that might give me a sense of what was happening in this place. I searched through the rooms and found something that filled me with dread. A large, ancient book, its pages filled with strange symbols and diagrams I couldn't understand. It looked as though it had been placed deliberately for me to find, its cover worn and aged. I opened it carefully, not knowing what I would discover. But the sight of the words, written in a language I could not read, sent chills down my spine. I cannot explain why, but I feel as though I am being drawn deeper into a dark and terrifying web. There was one thing that stood out in the book, a series of references to creatures, beings that were not human, with powers that defied the laws of nature. The name Dracula appeared frequently, and I began to realize with growing horror that it was no coincidence. The Count was no ordinary man, and whatever he truly was, it was something ancient and evil. Later in the day, I tried to confront him, but he was evasive. When I asked about the book I had found, he brushed me off with a smile, claiming that it was nothing more than old folklore and superstition. But his eyes, those piercing eyes, betrayed the lie. I could see that he was hiding something dark and horrifying. His demeanor grew more erratic, and I began to understand that he was not merely toying with me. He was controlling everything around me, keeping me here for reasons I cannot yet fathom. As I write this, I am more certain than ever that I am in great danger. The castle itself is a prison, and I am its captive. I must find a way to escape, but the more I try, the more I feel like I'm being drawn into something I cannot escape from. Tonight, I will try again. I will not rest until I find a way out. The Count's eyes still haunt me, and I know I cannot trust him. There is something monstrous in this castle, and it is coming for me. Chapter 7, Jonathan Harker's Journal. 20th of May, Castle Dracula. The air in this place seems to thicken with each passing hour, pressing down on me as though the castle itself conspires to keep me trapped within its ancient walls. I can feel its dark history seeping into me, and though I try to focus my thoughts, fear clouds my mind. I spent the morning exploring the castle again, searching for anything that might help me. Every step down the endless corridors felt as though I were being watched. I tried to steel my nerves, reminding myself that paranoia would only weaken me further. Yet, the feeling persisted, an oppressive presence lingering just beyond sight. As I walked, I came upon a massive door that I had not noticed before. Its heavy iron frame was inlaid with strange carvings, symbols that looked both archaic and sinister. The handle was icy to the touch, as though it hadn't been used in centuries. When I pushed, the door groaned in protest but yielded, revealing a spiral staircase that plunged into darkness. My instincts screamed for me to turn back, but my curiosity and desperation for answers propelled me forward. The air grew colder as I descended, carrying with it a faint, musty smell that seemed to come from the very bones of the castle. At the bottom of the stairs was another door, this one wooden and splintered, as though it had endured centuries of use or struggle. I opened it carefully, and what I saw chilled me to the core. The room beyond was vast and dimly lit by the faint light of a torch mounted on the far wall. Rows of stone coffins lined the room, their lids sealed with heavy slabs of granite. The air was thick with the scent of decay and dampness, and I felt my stomach churn as I approached. One coffin in particular caught my eye. It was larger than the others, its lid carved with intricate designs that seemed to writhe in the flickering torchlight. I hesitated, unsure if I truly wanted to know what lay within. But something compelled me. Whether it was courage or foolishness, I cannot say. Slowly, I pushed at the lid, and it slid open with a grating sound that echoed through the chamber. Inside lay the Count. He was pale as death, his eyes closed, his hands folded across his chest. Yet he did not look lifeless. His face, though devoid of color, was full of an unnatural vitality, as though he were merely sleeping. I stared in horror, unable to look away. His lips were slightly parted, revealing sharp, gleaming teeth that sent a shiver through me. Before I could process what I was seeing, his eyes snapped open. I stumbled backward, my heart pounding. For a moment, he did not move, but his gaze locked onto mine with an intensity that froze me in place. Then slowly, he rose from the coffin, his movements fluid and inhumanly graceful. "You should not be here," he said, his voice calm but dripping with menace. I tried to stammer out an explanation, but no words came. My mind raced, searching for a way to escape, but my body felt rooted to the spot. The Count stepped closer, his presence overwhelming. "You are curious, Jonathan," he continued. "Curiosity can be a dangerous thing in a place like this." He raised a hand, and I flinched, expecting some violent act. Instead, he simply gestured toward the door. "Leave this place and forget what you have seen, for your own sake." I didn't need to be told twice. I fled the room, my footsteps echoing up the spiral staircase as I ran. When I reached my chamber, I bolted the door and collapsed onto the bed, my body trembling with fear and exhaustion. Later. Night has fallen, and I can still feel his eyes on me, even though I am alone. I do not know how much longer I can endure this. Every fiber of my being tells me to flee, but where would I go? The castle is a fortress, its doors and windows sealed, its corridors twisting and endless. I fear I am losing my grip on reality. The Count is no ordinary man, of this I am certain. What I witnessed in that crypt was not natural. He is something else entirely, something beyond human comprehension. I have no choice but to continue pretending to trust him, though every moment in his presence fills me with dread. I must find a way out of this place before it is too late. Whatever the Count's plans for me, I cannot allow myself to remain here any longer. If this journal should ever find its way into someone else's hands, let it serve as a warning. The world is darker than we can imagine, and there are things that dwell in the shadows that should never be disturbed. Chapter 8, Jonathan Harker's Journal. 25th May, Castle Dracula. I write these words with a trembling hand, the events of the past few days weighing heavily on my mind. The castle, once merely a peculiar and unsettling residence, now feels like a tomb, its every corner whispering secrets of ancient evil. This morning, I resolved to attempt escape once more. The Count had been absent for the past 2 nights, leaving me alone to ponder my growing desperation. As the sun rose, I examined the windows in my room, testing their strength and the drop below. Though the cliffs are sheer, I believe there might be a way to descend, if only I could fashion a rope from the bedclothes. But as I made my preparations, a knock came at my door. I froze, expecting to see one of the Count's thralls or the man himself. Instead, when I opened it cautiously, there was no one there, only a small bundle left on the floor. Inside was a note written in the Count's elegant hand. You may explore the library today. There are answers within. This was unexpected. For weeks I had been confined to the same small chambers, allowed only fleeting glimpses of the castle's interior under his watchful gaze. Now he was offering me something I had craved, a chance to understand. Later, the library was immense, its walls lined with towering shelves of books in every language I could think of, and many I could not. The air was thick with the scent of leather and age, and the flickering light of the torches cast eerie shadows that danced across the room. I began my search eagerly, sifting through volumes of history, folklore, and science. At first, I found little of interest. Tales of battles long forgotten, chronicles of kings and empires that no longer existed. But as I delved deeper into the collection, the nature of the books began to change. There were texts on alchemy and the occult, grimoires filled with symbols and incantations that made my skin crawl. One book in particular caught my attention, a leather-bound volume with no title on its cover. When I opened it, I found page after page of strange symbols and diagrams, accompanied by passages in a language I could not decipher. It was then that I realized the Count was not merely a student of history or philosophy. He was a creature of immense knowledge, one who had delved into the darkest corners of human understanding. As I studied the books, a voice broke the silence. Do you find the answers you seek, Jonathan? I turned sharply to see the Count standing in the doorway, his face as unreadable as ever. He moved into the room with his usual grace, his presence filling the space as though the very air bent to accommodate him. You have been kind enough to let me explore, Count, I said carefully. But I must admit, the questions only grow. He smiled faintly, his sharp teeth glinting in the firelight. Knowledge often begets more questions than answers. That is the nature of truth, is it not? I wanted to demand answers, to confront him about what I had seen in the crypt, about the horrors I felt lurking behind his every word. But his gaze held me captive, and I found myself unable to speak. Instead, he gestured to a chair near the fire. Sit, Jonathan. There is much we must discuss. Reluctantly, I obeyed, my heart pounding as he took the seat opposite me. Tell me, he began, his tone almost conversational, what do you know of the old legends of this land? I hesitated, unsure of how to respond. Only what little I have read, I admitted. Stories of vampires and spirits, tales to frighten children. His smile widened, and for a moment I thought I saw a flicker of something dark in his eyes. Amusement, perhaps, or satisfaction. Ah, but legends often contain a kernel of truth, he said, and sometimes the truth is far stranger than the tales themselves. He leaned forward, his voice dropping to a near whisper. You are a man of the modern world, Jonathan, a man of logic and reason. But what would you say if I told you that there are forces at work in this world that defy all reason? That there are powers ancient and eternal, hidden in the shadows? I swallowed hard, my throat dry. I would say that I would need proof. The Count laughed softly, a sound that sent a shiver down my spine. Proof, you say? Perhaps you will find it in time, or perhaps it will find you. He rose then, his figure towering over me. For now, continue your studies, Jonathan. There is much to learn, and you are a diligent student. But remember this, knowledge is a double-edged sword. Handle it with care. With that, he left the room, his departure as silent as his arrival. Evening. As I sit here writing these words, I cannot shake the feeling that I am being drawn into something far larger than myself. The Count is not merely a man, of this I am certain, but what he truly is I do not yet understand. The books in the library hold fragments of the truth, but they also raise questions that chill me to the bone. What is the Count's purpose in bringing me here? Why does he now encourage me to explore when he has kept me so confined before? I fear that I am a pawn in a game I cannot comprehend, a game whose stakes are far greater than my own life. But for now, I have no choice but to play along and hope that somehow I can find a way to escape before it is too late. Chapter 9, Jonathan Harker's Journal. 20th of June, Castle Dracula. The days pass slowly here, a strange monotony punctuated by moments of sheer terror. I am a prisoner in every sense of the word, though the Count's polite facade might suggest otherwise. Every action I take is monitored, every word I speak seemingly weighed and measured. I have taken to recording my thoughts more frequently, partly to maintain some sense of sanity, and partly to leave behind a record should I fail to escape this dreadful place. This morning, I awoke to find another letter waiting for me on the small table by my bed. It was written in the Count's elegant script. My dear Jonathan, the castle offers many wonders, but also many dangers. You are free to explore certain areas, but I must caution you against wandering into the crypts or the tower. For your own safety, I must insist upon this rule. Yours faithfully, Dracula. His words were both a warning and a taunt. The forbidden areas he mentioned were precisely where I felt I might uncover the answers I sought. What lay in those crypts? What horrors awaited in the tower? Later, despite the Count's warning, I resolved to investigate the castle further. With every passing day, I feel the walls closing in around me, the weight of this place pressing heavily on my mind. My nerves are frayed, but I cannot allow fear to paralyze me. I waited until evening, when the Count seemed to vanish into whatever nocturnal pursuits occupied him. Armed with nothing but a small candle, I began my descent into the lower levels of the castle. The air grew colder as I ventured downward, the stone walls damp and slick beneath my fingers. The faint sound of dripping water echoed around me, each drop reverberating like a heartbeat in the oppressive silence. At last, I came upon a heavy wooden door, its iron hinges rusted with age. It took all my strength to push it open, the hinges groaning in protest. Beyond lay a vast crypt, its walls lined with stone coffins. The air was thick, the urge to flee, and I fought the urge to flee, casting long shadows across the room, and I thought I saw movement out of the corner of my eye. But when I turned, there was nothing there, only the oppressive silence and the weight of the coffins around me. In the center of the crypt, a single coffin stood apart from the rest. It was larger and more ornate, its lid carved with intricate designs. I approached it slowly, my heart pounding. As I reached out to touch the lid, a low growl echoed through the room. I froze, my candle trembling in my hand. The growl grew louder, reverberating through the crypt like the rumble of distant thunder. And then I saw them, eyes red and glowing emerging from the shadows. Before I could react, the door to the crypt slammed shut, plunging me into darkness. My candle went out, and I was left alone in the pitch-black void, the sound of my own panicked breathing filling my ears. I groped blindly for the door, my fingers scrabbling against the cold stone. The growl grew louder, and I felt the hot breath of some unseen creature against my neck. With a surge of adrenaline, I flung myself at the door, pounding on it with all my strength. It gave way at last, and I stumbled out into the corridor, slamming the door shut behind me. I ran blindly through the castle, not stopping until I reached the safety of my room. Midnight. The Count returned shortly after my ordeal, his demeanor as calm and composed as ever. He made no mention of my escapade, though I am certain he knows what I have done. As I write these words, I can hear the faint sound of footsteps outside my door. Whether they belong to the Count or some other denizen of this cursed castle, I cannot say. I am trapped in a nightmare, and I fear there is no waking from it. The Count's warning was clear. The castle holds many dangers, but what he does not say, and what I now know to be true, is that he is the greatest danger of all. If I am to escape, it must be soon. Each day I spend here chips away at my resolve, my strength, my very sense of self. I pray that these words reach Mina, or someone who can make sense of them. For now, I must prepare for whatever comes next. This castle is not merely a prison, it is a graveyard, and I am perilously close to joining its ranks. Chapter 10, Jonathan Harker's Journal. 24th of June, Castle Dracula. Another sleepless night, another day filled with dread. My mind races with thoughts of escape, yet my body feels chained by fear. The Count continues to weave his web, and I feel like a fly caught in its sticky threads. Last night, I was awoken by the sound of strange voices outside my door. At first, I thought it might be the servants, or whatever they are, moving about in the night. But as I strained to listen, the voices sounded less like men and more like whispers of the wind, eerie and unearthly. This place is alive with horrors, both seen and unseen. Later, morning. The Count appeared during breakfast, as he sometimes does, with his usual courtesy and charm. He greeted me warmly, inquiring about my health as though I were a guest and not his prisoner. "Jonathan," he said, his dark eyes fixed on mine, "I trust you are finding the castle to your liking. It is not often that I have visitors, you see. I treasure these moments of companionship." I nodded politely, though every word from his lips seemed to carry a hidden menace. "It is an extraordinary place," I replied carefully. He smiled, showing just the faintest glint of his sharp teeth. "Ah, but there is much yet for you to see, my friend. You are a man of the world, are you not? An explorer of knowledge. Perhaps there are things even you have not yet imagined." His words chilled me, and I felt as though he could see straight into my soul. Afternoon. Desperate for a sense of normalcy, I resolved to explore the castle further. It is a maze of endless corridors and rooms, each more unsettling than the last. The air itself seems to hum with an unnatural energy, as though the very stones of this place are alive. I found myself drawn to a high tower, its spiraling staircase crumbling with age. As I climbed, I felt a growing unease, as though unseen eyes were watching me. At the top, I discovered a room filled with ancient manuscripts and books, their pages yellowed with time. One book caught my eye, a thick tome bound in black leather. It was written in a language I could not understand, but the illustrations were grotesque, images of monstrous creatures, rituals performed beneath the light of a blood-red moon, and shadowy figures cloaked in darkness. I shuddered and put the book back on the shelf, feeling as though I had glimpsed something forbidden. Evening, the Count visited me again, this time just before sunset. He seemed different. His presence, always commanding, now felt oppressive, as though the very air grew heavy when he entered the room. He spoke of his homeland, of its history and the bloodshed that had shaped it. "The land remembers," he said, his voice low and reverent. "Every drop of blood spilled upon it feeds its power, its life." There was something in his tone, a hunger, a longing, that made my skin crawl. "You have traveled far, Jonathan," he continued. "You have seen much. But have you truly understood the power of blood?" I did not know how to respond. His gaze bore into me, and for a moment I felt as though I were falling into an abyss. "You will," he said finally, his lips curling into a smile. "In time, you will understand everything. Midnight. I am writing this by candlelight, my heart pounding with fear." Tonight I heard the voices again, louder this time, and accompanied by a low, guttural growl. I barricaded my door as best I could, using the furniture in my room to block it. I do not know if it will be enough. This place is suffocating me. The Count grows bolder, more menacing with each passing day. I do not know how much longer I can endure. If I cannot find a way to escape, I fear I will lose myself entirely. The walls of this castle are closing in, and the darkness feels as though it is seeping into my very soul. I must stay strong. I must find a way out. Mina, if these words ever reach you, know that I am fighting with everything I have. But the shadows are long, and the night is endless. God help me. Chapter 11, Jonathan Harker's Journal. 20th of June, Castle Dracula. Each day feels like a lifetime. The oppressive weight of this castle, the Count's looming presence, and the strange occurrences in the night gnaw at my sanity. I've begun to doubt even my own senses. What is real and what is the product of my frayed mind? This morning, as the pale light filtered weakly through the castle windows, I resolved to take action. I must find a way to escape this accursed place. Morning! The Count appeared unexpectedly during breakfast. He spoke casually, as though we were simply two men enjoying conversation. It is a cruel facade, he maintains, this mask of civility hiding the predator within. Jonathan, he said, I see that you are troubled. This is not the way of a guest in my home. Perhaps there is something I can do to ease your mind. His words were laced with mockery. I could see it in his eyes, that glimmer of amusement at my plight. My hands clenched the edge of the table as I forced myself to remain composed. Your hospitality is overwhelming, I replied, unable to suppress the bitterness in my voice. The Count smiled, his lips pulling back just enough to reveal the faintest hint of his sharp teeth. Good. I would not want you to feel unappreciated. I barely managed to excuse myself, retreating to the relative safety of my room. Afternoon. Driven by desperation, I ventured again into the depths of the castle, searching for any clue, any path that might lead to freedom. The castle is a labyrinth, its passages twisting and turning as though designed to confound and disorient. In one dimly lit corridor, I stumbled upon a door I had not noticed before. It creaked open under my touch, revealing a small, circular room. The air inside was cold, and the walls were lined with shelves stacked with strange objects. Jars of dried herbs, ancient trinkets, and what looked disturbingly like human bones. At the center of the room stood a stone altar, its surface stained dark with what I feared could only be blood. A terrible dread filled me, and I fled the room, my footsteps echoing in the emptiness. Evening, the sun sank below the horizon, casting the castle into shadow. I feel the night pressing in around me, the walls of this place seeming to pulse with a life of their own. The Count visited me again, just as the last rays of daylight disappeared. He entered without a sound, his presence filling the room with a chilling silence. I trust you are finding your stay. Enlightening, he said, his tone as smooth as silk. I dared not respond. Instead, I kept my gaze on the floor, unwilling to meet his eyes. He moved closer, his footsteps soft but deliberate. You are learning, Jonathan. Every day, you learn more about the power of this place, the secrets it holds. But do not be afraid. Knowledge is the greatest gift I can offer you. I wanted to shout, to demand my freedom, but the words caught in my throat. Rest well tonight, the Count said, his voice a low whisper. Tomorrow you will understand more. With that, he was gone, leaving behind only the faint scent of decay. Midnight. I cannot sleep. The castle is alive with sounds, footsteps echoing in the halls, whispers that seem to come from nowhere, and the distant howling of wolves. I tried to pray, but even the words of the prayer felt hollow in this cursed place. My thoughts are consumed by fear and despair. I do not know how much longer I can endure this torment. The Count's words haunt me, his promises of knowledge and understanding filling me with dread. What does he mean? What does he intend for me? If I cannot find a way to escape soon, I fear I will lose more than my freedom. I will lose myself. God, please, give me strength. If these words reach anyone, let them serve as a warning. This place, this creature, it must not be allowed to spread its evil beyond these walls. The night stretches on, endless and oppressive, and somewhere in the darkness, the Count is watching. Chapter 12, Jonathan Harker's Journal. 2nd July, Castle Dracula. The days pass in a fog of dread and helplessness. I no longer know how long I have been here. Time in this cursed place seems to bend and twist as though ruled by forces beyond comprehension. My body weakens with each passing hour, my spirit teetering on the edge of despair. This morning I resolved to search again for a way out. There must be some passage, some crack in the castle's defenses through which I can escape. Morning, I ventured into the higher towers of the castle, hoping to find an unguarded exit. The higher I climbed, the colder the air grew, until frost seemed to cling to the very stones. At last, I reached a narrow corridor ending in a small barred window. Outside, the view was breathtaking. Mountains rising into the sky, their peaks shrouded in mist. But the sight only deepened my despair. The drop from the window was sheer, the valley below impossibly distant. Even if I could break the bars, I would surely fall to my death. As I stood there, lost in thought, I heard the faint sound of wings. Looking down, I saw them, bats swarming in the moonlight, their cries echoing against the cliffs. They seemed to move with purpose, almost as though directed by an unseen hand. It chilled me to the bone, and I hurried back to my room. Afternoon. The Count appeared unannounced, as he often does, his movements as silent as a shadow. He seemed in good spirits, his demeanor almost jovial. "You look troubled, Jonathan," he said, seating himself across from me. "Do you not enjoy my hospitality?" I could not hide my anger. "Your hospitality? You hold me here against my will. What kind of host imprisons his guest?" His smile widened, revealing his sharp teeth. "Imprisonment is a matter of perspective, my dear friend. I have offered you safety, shelter, and knowledge. It is you who resist." The audacity of his words left me speechless. He continued, his voice taking on a more sinister tone. "Do you think you can leave this place without my permission? This castle, these lands, they are mine as you are mine. Do not forget that." The air seemed to grow colder as he spoke. I could feel his power pressing down on me, an invisible force that left me breathless. When he left, I sank to the floor, trembling. Evening, I forced myself to eat, though the food brought no comfort. My appetite has all but vanished, replaced by a gnawing fear. I know now that the Count is no ordinary man. He is something else entirely, something ancient and terrible. As I sat in my room, staring at the crucifix the old woman had given me, I heard the faint sound of laughter. It was soft at first, barely audible, but it grew louder, filling the room with its cruel echo. I looked around, but there was no one there. The laughter seemed to come from the very walls. Midnight. The nights are the worst. The castle comes alive with strange sounds, whispers, footsteps, and the howling of wolves. I cannot sleep, for every shadow seems to move, every sound a harbinger of doom. Tonight, as I lay in bed, I heard the sound of my door creaking open. I froze, my heart pounding in my chest. 3 women entered the room, their movements graceful yet predatory. Their beauty was unnatural, their pale faces framed by cascading hair. They smiled at me, their eyes glowing with hunger. "Poor man," one of them whispered. "So far from home, so alone." Another laughed softly. "Do not fear, dear one, we will take care of you." I wanted to move, to scream, but my body would not obey. They drew closer, their hands cold as they caressed my face. Just as I felt their breath against my neck, the door slammed open. The Count stood there, his eyes blazing with fury. "How dare you?" He roared, his voice echoing through the room. "This man belongs to me." The women shrank back, hissing like wild animals. The Count's presence seemed to fill the room, his power undeniable. "Go," he commanded. "Now!" The women fled, their laughter fading into the distance. The Count turned to me, his expression unreadable. "Remember, Jonathan," he said softly, "you are mine. No one else may claim you." With that, he left, closing the door behind him. I am writing this now, my hands shaking. I do not know how much more of this I can endure. If I do not find a way to escape soon, I fear I will lose my very soul to this place. May God protect me. Chapter 13, Jonathan Harker's Journal. 15th July, Castle Dracula. The days blur together in this cursed place, but today, something unusual happened. Something that has left me both hopeful and terrified. I have tried to maintain my sanity by recording everything in this journal, but I fear my grip on reality weakens with each passing day. My dreams, when I dare to sleep, are filled with images of shadowy figures, blood, and laughter that cuts through the night like a blade. But today, something changed. Morning. I awoke to find the Count absent, a rare occurrence, as he usually visits me at least once a day to ensure my continued captivity under the guise of courtesy. Taking advantage of this, I decided to search more thoroughly for a way out. I explored the lower levels of the castle, venturing into areas I had previously avoided due to their oppressive darkness and air of decay. The stone walls seemed to close in around me, their damp surface cold under my fingertips. As I turned a corner, I stumbled upon a door I had not noticed before. It was heavy, made of iron, and appeared ancient, its surface rusted but sturdy. I pushed against it with all my strength, but it would not budge. Afternoon, I returned to my room in frustration, only to find a bundle waiting on the table. It was a fresh change of clothes, simple but clean. The sight of it unnerved me. How had it come to be there? Had someone entered while I was exploring? This castle seems to breathe and move like a living thing, always one step ahead of me. I feel as though I am being watched, even when I see no one. Evening. As the sun set, the castle seemed to grow darker than usual, as if the night itself were seeping into the stones. I resolved to return to the iron door, this time armed with a crowbar I had found in one of the storerooms. I waited until the howling of the wolves began, an eerie nightly chorus that seemed to mask other sounds. Gripping the crowbar tightly, I made my way back to the door. To my surprise, it was slightly ajar. Cautiously, I pushed it open and stepped inside. The air was damp and heavy, carrying a metallic tang that turned my stomach. The room was cavernous, filled with crates and boxes stacked high against the walls. I pried one open, my heart racing. Inside, I found dirt, nothing but earth. Confused, I examined another and then another. All were the same, crates filled with dirt. It was then that I noticed a figure lying in one of the boxes. My breath caught as I realized it was the Count. He lay motionless, his pale skin almost glowing in the dim light. His eyes were closed and his lips slightly parted, revealing his sharp teeth. He looked almost serene, as though he were merely sleeping. But I knew better. I approached slowly, holding my breath. This was my chance. If I could kill him now, perhaps I could free myself from this nightmare. My hands trembled as I searched for a weapon, finally settling on a jagged piece of wood from one of the broken crates. As I raised it above his heart, his eyes snapped open. They burned with an unnatural light, and his lips curled into a smile that chilled me to the bone. "Jonathan," he said, his voice soft but laced with menace. "Did you think it would be so easy?" Before I could react, he moved. So quickly that he seemed to blur before my eyes. The next thing I knew, I was on the floor, the piece of wood clattering away into the darkness. "You are brave, my friend," he said, towering over me. "But bravery without wisdom is foolishness." He leaned closer, his eyes locking onto mine. "You cannot kill me, Jonathan. Not here, not now. This place is my domain, and you are nothing but a fly caught in my web." I tried to look away, but his gaze held me captive. I felt a strange heaviness in my limbs, as though my very will were being drained from me. "Do not despair," he said, almost kindly. "Your time will come, but for now, you must rest." Night. When I awoke, I was back in my room. I do not know how I got here, nor how long I was unconscious. The crucifix around my neck feels heavier than ever, and my hands are shaking as I write this. The Count's words echo in my mind. "Your time will come." I do not know what he meant, but I fear it bodes ill for me. If there is any hope left, it lies in escape. I must find a way to leave this place, or I will surely lose not only my life, but my very soul. Tomorrow, I will try again. Chapter 14. Jonathan Harker's Journal. 29th July, Castle Dracula. The darkness in this cursed place grows heavier with each passing day. Though I have tried to maintain my sanity and faith in an eventual escape, despair gnaws at me like a ravenous beast. The Count's movements have become more erratic, his demeanor shifting unpredictably between cordial host and terrifying predator. This morning, I awoke to find another letter written in my hand, but dictated by him. An update from Mina, filled with lies about my contentment and progress here. The weight of his control over me feels insurmountable. Morning. I spent the early hours in my room, gazing out at the bleak horizon through the barred window. The forests below are dense and seem to stretch endlessly, with no sign of civilization or hope. The wolves that roam the grounds continue their nightly howling, their cries a chilling reminder of my isolation. But something unusual occurred. I heard voices echoing faintly through the halls, a strange, low murmuring that seemed neither entirely human nor entirely animal. I followed the sound, careful to move silently, my heart pounding with a mixture of fear and curiosity. The voices led me to a narrow stairway spiraling deep beneath the castle. These were stairs I had never dared to descend before, as the air there seemed thick and foul, as though tainted by centuries of decay. But now, driven by desperation, I ventured down into the abyss. The steps were uneven, carved roughly into the stone, and the darkness seemed alive, pressing against me with an almost physical weight. When I reached the bottom, I found myself in a vast chamber lit dimly by torches. At its center was a large stone altar, surrounded by figures cloaked in shadow. Their chanting grew louder as I approached, the words guttural and unintelligible, but filled with an undeniable menace. And then I saw him. The Count stood at the head of the group, his hands raised high as if commanding the very air around him. His eyes glowed faintly in the torchlight, and his presence dominated the room, making the shadows seem deeper and the flickering flames weaker. I could not understand what he was doing, but I knew it was dark magic, something ancient and evil. Afternoon. When I returned to my room, my body trembled with fear and exhaustion. What I had seen in that chamber confirmed my worst suspicions. The Count is no ordinary man, nor even an ordinary vampire. He is something far older, a creature of such immense power that my attempts to defy him seem laughable. And yet I must try. I spent the afternoon scouring the room for anything that might aid in my escape. The crucifix around my neck, given to me by the old woman in the village, has provided some protection against the Count, but it is not enough. I need a weapon, a way to fight back. Hidden beneath the loose floorboards, I found a fragment of broken glass. It is crude and dangerous, but it is all I have. Evening, as night fell, the castle grew unnaturally quiet. The wolves did not howl, and even the wind seemed to hold its breath. I knew the Count would come for me tonight. I waited in the darkness, the broken glass clutched tightly in my hand. My heart raced as I heard his footsteps approaching, slow, deliberate, and filled with the confidence of a predator stalking its prey. The door to my room creaked open, and he entered, his pale face illuminated by the faint moonlight. He smiled, his fangs glinting, and I felt a chill run down my spine. "Jonathan," he said, his voice smooth and calm, "you have been restless. I can feel it. You seek to escape, do you not?" I said nothing, my grip tightening on the shard of glass. "There is no escape," he continued, his tone almost pitying. "This castle is alive, bound to me as I am bound to it. Even if you were to flee, it would call you back." I could bear his words no longer. With a surge of desperate courage, I lunged at him, aiming the shard of glass at his heart. But he moved faster than I could see, his hand catching my wrist with inhuman strength. The glass fell to the floor, shattering into useless fragments. "You are brave," he said, his grip tightening painfully, "but bravery alone will not save you." He released me suddenly, and I fell to the floor, gasping for breath. "Rest now, Jonathan," he said, his voice soft but commanding. "You will need your strength for what is to come." Night. As I write this, I can feel the Count's eyes watching me, though I am alone in my room. I do not know what he plans, but I fear it will be worse than anything I have yet endured. If I am to survive, I must find a way to outwit him. But how can I fight a creature who is not bound by the laws of man or nature? Mina, if you ever read this, know that I love you and that I will do everything in my power to return to you. But if I fail, remember me, not as a man who was defeated, but as one who fought until the very end. Tomorrow I will search again for a way out. I must. My very soul depends on it. Chapter 15, Jonathan Harker's Journal. The 5th of September, evening. I write this now from a quiet room at Dr. Seward's asylum, though my mind and body are far from restful. It is strange to hold this pen, to feel its familiar weight after so many days of turmoil. My thoughts are fragmented, like a shattered mirror reflecting the madness of the last few weeks. Mina is safe, at least for the moment, and that is my greatest comfort. Yet in her eyes, I can see the lingering shadows of the evil that has touched us. The Count's presence has left an indelible mark on both of us, and I cannot shake the sense that we are still being watched, that he is not yet finished with us. Morning. Dr. Seward and I began the day poring over his journals and notes, piecing together what we know of the Count's movements. It seems he has fled back to his castle in Transylvania, but his influence here in England lingers like a toxic fog. Lucy's death, though tragic, has given us insight into his methods, and we are determined to use this knowledge against him. Professor Van Helsing has been tireless in his efforts to strengthen our resolve. He speaks often of courage and faith, of how humanity must rise against the dark forces that seek to undo it. His words are a balm to my spirit, though they do little to ease my lingering dread. Mina has been helping us, her keen mind and sharp memory invaluable in organizing our fragmented accounts. Yet I worry for her. She is pale and weary, and though she tries to mask her pain, I see it in her every gesture. Afternoon. Today we visited the cemetery where Lucy was laid to rest. The air was heavy with the scent of damp earth and decay, and the sight of her tomb filled me with a sorrow so profound it was almost unbearable. Van Helsing led us in a solemn ritual to sanctify her grave. He placed a crucifix upon the tombstone and recited prayers in Latin, his voice steady and commanding. As he spoke, I felt a strange sensation, as though the very ground beneath my feet was trembling with suppressed power. The professor believes that Lucy's soul is now at peace, that she has been freed from the Count's grasp. I hope he is right. The thought of her suffering, even in death, is more than I can bear. Evening. The night has fallen, and with it comes a sense of foreboding that I cannot shake. We have gathered in the study to discuss our next steps. Van Helsing is adamant that we must pursue the Transylvania to destroy him at his source. I am resolved to go, though the thought fills me with dread. The castle looms large in my memory, its dark halls and shadowed corridors etched into my mind like scars. To return there is to walk willingly into the jaws of the beast, but I see no other choice. Mina has insisted on coming with us, though we have tried to dissuade her. She is strong, stronger than I ever imagined, but I fear for her safety. The bond between her and the Count is something none of us fully understand, and I cannot bear the thought of her falling into his clutches again. Night. As I prepare for bed, I find myself writing this entry with trembling hands. The crucifix that the old woman in Bistritz gave me is still around my neck, a small but powerful reminder of the faith that has sustained me through this ordeal. I think often of those first days in the castle, of the fear and confusion that gripped me then. How far I have come since that time. And yet, the danger is greater now than ever before. Tomorrow, we will make our plans to journey to Transylvania. It will be a long and perilous journey, but I am ready. The Count must be stopped, not just for Mina's sake, but for all of humanity. If this journal should ever fall into other hands, let it serve as a warning. Evil is real, and it walks among us. But it can be fought, and it can be defeated. Mina, my love, if I do not return, know that you are my light in the darkness, my hope in despair. I will fight for you, for us, until my last breath. Chapter 16, Jonathan Harker's Journal, 29th September, night. I am writing this entry in a state of exhaustion, my hand trembling and my mind racing with the events of this terrible night. The memory of what we have done and witnessed will stay with me until the end of my days. Though my spirit feels heavy, I must record everything while it is fresh in my mind, for the battle against the Count continues, and every detail may be crucial. This night began in grim anticipation. Van Helsing, Seward, Arthur, Quincy, and I set out together. Our purpose clear, but our hearts weighed with sorrow. Tonight, we would lay Lucy's tormented soul to rest. Each of us carried the tools needed for the task, a mallet, a stake, and courage forged in the fires of love and desperation. The cemetery. We arrived at the cemetery under cover of darkness. The moon hung low, casting an eerie glow over the tombstones and crypts. The wind whispered through the trees, carrying with it a chill that settled deep in my bones. Lucy's tomb was silent, yet I felt as though unseen eyes were watching us from every shadow. Van Helsing was the first to speak. He instructed us with the gravity of a general preparing his troops for battle. He explained what we were about to do and why it was necessary. Arthur's face was pale but resolute. He clutched the stake tightly, his knuckles white. I could see the pain in his eyes, the torment of what he was about to do to the woman he had loved. Van Helsing opened the tomb, and we descended into its cold, damp depths. The air was heavy with the scent of decay, but when we saw Lucy, my breath caught in my throat. She was more beautiful than I remembered, her cheeks flushed with a semblance of life, and her lips red as roses. But her beauty was unnatural, unholy. The confrontation. Arthur gasped at the sight of her, his grief mingling with horror. Lucy opened her eyes and smiled, a cruel, mocking smile that chilled me to the core. She rose from her coffin, her movements fluid and graceful, yet devoid of humanity. "Arthur, my love," she whispered, her voice sweet and seductive. She reached out to him, but Van Helsing stepped between them, holding up a crucifix. At the sight of the holy symbol, Lucy hissed and drew back, her face contorted with rage. I had never seen such a creature before, and I pray I never see one again. The Lucy we had loved was gone, replaced by this monstrous thing. Van Helsing urged Arthur to do what needed to be done. For her soul, he said, for her eternal peace. Arthur hesitated, his hand trembling as he raised the stake. The anguish on his face was unbearable to witness, but then he steeled himself. With one swift motion, he drove the stake through Lucy's heart. The release. The scream that followed was not Lucy's, but something otherworldly, a sound that seemed to come from the depths of hell itself. Her body convulsed, and for a moment I thought I could see a shadow, dark and shapeless, rise from her form and dissipate into the air. Then it was over. Lucy lay still, her face serene and peaceful, as if she were merely sleeping. The transformation was astonishing. The grotesque mockery of her former self was gone, and in its place was the Lucy we had all known and loved. Arthur fell to his knees, tears streaming down his face. He kissed her forehead and whispered her name, his voice trembling with grief and relief. Van Helsing placed a hand on his shoulder, his eyes filled with compassion. Aftermath. We completed the ritual by sealing the tomb with holy symbols and prayers. Van Helsing assured us that Lucy's soul was now at peace, freed from the Count's curse. It was a small victory in our battle against the darkness, but it came at a great cost. As we left the cemetery, the first rays of dawn broke through the night sky, bathing the world in a soft, golden light. It felt like a sign, a promise that we were not alone in this fight. Yet my heart is heavy with the knowledge that the Count is still out there, his evil unchecked. Reflection. I cannot shake the image of Lucy as we found her tonight, nor the sound of her voice as she tried to lure Arthur to his doom. The Count has taken so much from us already, and I fear he will take more before this is over, but I am resolved to see this through, to fight him with everything I have, for Lucy, for Mina, for all of us. Chapter 17, Jonathan Harker's Journal. October evening. This has been a day of revelations and a strengthening of our resolve. As I write, my heart swells with determination, for I know we are closer to understanding the Count's vile plans. Still, the weight of our task looms over us, and I fear for what lies ahead. The meeting at Dr. Seward's home. We gathered at Dr. Seward's residence to consolidate the fragments of knowledge we have amassed. Dr. Van Helsing presided over our meeting, his presence commanding, yet gentle. Mina was with us, her sharp mind and keen insight proving invaluable. Though I long to shield her from the horrors we face, I recognize that her strength and clarity are crucial to our mission. Van Helsing began by recounting Lucy's fate and the dark power the Count holds over those he corrupts. He explained that the vampire feeds not only on blood, but on the very soul of its victim, leaving them as hollow shells bound to its will. His words struck us deeply, but they also fueled our determination. As we compared our experiences, a clearer picture of the Count's movements emerged. My own memories of Castle Dracula, Mina's account of Whitby, Dr. Seward's diary of Renfield's ravings, all these threads wove together to reveal the scope of the Count's ambitions. He seeks to spread his evil across England, to create a domain of terror that will enslave countless lives. The letters and logs. Mina, ever resourceful, has been transcribing and organizing all our records. She brought out the letters, diaries, and ship's logs we had collected. As she read aloud, I was struck by her calm demeanor and unwavering resolve. She is far stronger than I ever gave her credit for, and I am humbled by her courage. The log of the Demeter confirmed our worst fears. The Count traveled to England with boxes of earth, his unholy sanctuary. These boxes are scattered across London, each one a fortress from which he can draw strength. We must find them all and render them useless. Renfield's behavior also gave us much to consider. Dr. Seward shared entries from his journal, noting how the man's mania fluctuated in response to the Count's proximity. Van Helsing suggested that Renfield in his madness might serve as a barometer of the Count's activities. It is a chilling thought, but one that may yet prove useful. Mina's hypnosis. Van Helsing proposed an experiment that left me uneasy, though I could not deny its potential value. He asked Mina if she would consent to being hypnotized, to see if her connection to the Count could reveal anything about his whereabouts. Mina agreed without hesitation, her bravery putting us all to shame. Under hypnosis, Mina described a dark, moving sensation as if she were afloat on water. She heard the lapping of waves and the creaking of wood. Van Helsing concluded that the Count was traveling, likely by ship, and this gave us a vital clue. We must act swiftly to intercept him. Reflection. As the meeting ended, I felt both hope and dread. We are no longer fumbling in the dark. We have a plan and a purpose. Yet the road ahead is fraught with danger. The Count is cunning and ruthless, and I fear he will not rest until he has destroyed us all. Mina is resting now, and I watch over her as I write. Her face is pale but serene, her strength unyielding. I pray we can save her from the shadow that threatens to consume her. For her sake, for all our sakes, we must prevail. Tomorrow we begin our search for the Count's lairs. The fight is far from over, but I will not falter. I will see this through to the end, whatever the cost. Chapter 18, Jonathan Harker's Journal. 5th October. The day began early with all of us gathered at Dr. Seward's home, resolute in our purpose to uncover and destroy every trace of the Count's unholy presence. Each new piece of information we uncover feels like another weight upon my shoulders, yet it is necessary if we are to succeed. Van Helsing has taken charge of our strategy with his usual precision and commanding demeanor. He is like the captain of a ship in a storm, guiding us through turbulent waters. Mina's contributions remain invaluable, though I cannot suppress my unease at how this struggle is affecting her. Her connection to the Count is undeniable, but she bears it with dignity and strength. Renfield's strange behavior. Dr. Seward informed us this morning of a peculiar development regarding Renfield. The man who has oscillated between fits of mania and lucidity now displays an unsettling calmness. Dr. Seward described it as the quiet before a storm. When Van Helsing questioned him, Renfield refused to speak of the Count directly, but his words carried a strange double meaning. "The master is near," he murmured cryptically. It sent a shiver down my spine. Van Helsing believes that Renfield's condition might provide critical insights into the Count's plans, though he warned us not to place too much trust in the ravings of a madman. The search for the Count's lairs. After a brief consultation, we divided into groups to begin our search for the Count's scattered coffins. These boxes of earth are his sanctuaries, and destroying them will render him vulnerable. Arthur and Quincy took one route, while Dr. Seward, Van Helsing, and I tackled another. Mina stayed behind at her own insistence to continue organizing our findings. The work was grueling, both physically and mentally. The boxes were hidden in remote or forgotten places, their mere presence emanating a sense of foreboding. We located 3 today, each one steeped in the stench of decay. Van Helsing led us in a ritual of purification, rendering the earth within them unusable for the Count's purposes. As I watched the consecration, I could almost feel the grip of darkness loosening, though it was not yet gone. Renfield's outburst. When we returned to Dr. Seward's asylum, we found him in a state of great agitation. Renfield had become uncontrollable, shouting and thrashing against his restraints. He seemed terrified and implored us to let him go, claiming that his life depended on it. The urgency in his voice was unsettling, as if he knew something we did not. Van Helsing leaned close to him, speaking soothingly, but Renfield's cries only grew louder. "The master comes! You cannot stop him!" he screamed before collapsing into silence. I cannot shake the feeling that Renfield's connection to the Count is deeper than we imagined. It is as if he is both a pawn and a victim, bound to the Count's will, but desperate to escape it. Mina's disturbing revelation. In the evening, Mina asked to speak with me alone. Her face was pale, her eyes dark with worry. She confessed that she had another strange dream, one in which she felt herself drawn to a misty darkness. She described the sensation of being enveloped by cold, lifeless arms and hearing a voice whispering in her ear. Her words filled me with dread, for they echoed my own memories of the Count. I tried to reassure her, but I could see the fear lingering in her eyes. Van Helsing believes that Mina's connection to the Count could be used to our advantage. But at what cost? I fear we are gambling with her very soul. Reflection. As I write this, Mina is resting, though her sleep is troubled. I sit by her side, keeping watch as the night deepens. The Count is out there somewhere, moving in the shadows and plotting his next move. We are gaining ground, but the battle is far from over. Each victory feels fleeting, as if the darkness is always one step ahead, yet I refuse to give in to despair. Mina's strength inspires me, and the bond we share gives me hope. Tomorrow, we will continue our search for the Count's lairs. We must act swiftly and decisively if we are to destroy him before it is too late. For Mina, for Lucy, for all those who have suffered at the hands of this monster, I will not rest until the Count is defeated. Chapter 19, Jonathan Harker's Journal. 6 October. Today was another day of relentless effort and grim discoveries. The Count's grip on us tightens, but so too does our resolve. We gathered early in Dr. Seward's study to plan our next steps, each of us carrying the weight of our mission like a yoke on our shoulders. Mina's growing burden. Mina seemed pale and distant this morning, her usual light dimmed by the ordeal she endures. She insists on being part of everything, determined not to be left behind, though I see the toll it takes on her. Her connection to the Count deepens in ways none of us fully understand. Van Helsing spoke with her at length, gently but firmly questioning her about the dreams she continues to have. Mina described a sense of being watched, as if unseen eyes followed her every movement. She mentioned hearing whispers, faint but unmistakable, beckoning her to some dark purpose. It breaks my heart to see her like this, caught in a web she cannot escape. I feel so helpless. Yet, Mina remains steadfast, her bravery surpassing my own. The hunt continues. Arthur, Quincy, and I set out again with Van Helsing to locate more of the Count's lairs. The locations, as derived from our research and Mina's careful notes, are scattered across the city, each hidden in places long forgotten or abandoned. The air seemed colder today, the weight of autumn's encroaching darkness pressing down on us. We located 2 more coffins in a derelict chapel on the outskirts of the city. The place reeked of death, the smell clinging to the very walls. Van Helsing performed the rituals of consecration with the same solemnity as before, his prayers rising above the eerie silence of the place. As he scattered the holy wafer within the boxes, I could almost feel the Count's rage emanating from afar. Each lair we destroy weakens him, but I fear it only makes him more desperate, and therefore more dangerous. Renfield's collapse. When we returned to Dr. Seward's asylum, we found him standing over Renfield, who lay unconscious on the floor of his cell. Renfield's condition had worsened rapidly throughout the day, and now he was barely clinging to life. Van Helsing examined him closely, his face grave. This man's life hangs by a thread, he said, but he is bound to Dracula in ways we do not yet understand. His fate may yet reveal the Count's next move. Dr. Seward seemed deeply shaken. Renfield's sudden decline was inexplicable, and yet in my heart I felt certain it was tied to the Count's proximity. Mina's strength and sorrow. In the evening, as we regrouped to share our findings, Mina sat quietly, her face drawn with exhaustion. When she spoke, her voice was steady, but there was a heaviness in her words. She has been carefully reviewing all our notes and creating detailed maps of the Count's movements and sanctuaries. Her work is meticulous, invaluable to our cause, but I cannot ignore the pall that hangs over her. As the evening wore on, she grew quieter, withdrawing into herself. I fear for her, for what the Count might be doing to her mind, her soul. Now, as I sit by the fire writing this, the house feels steeped in a heavy silence. Mina has gone to bed, though I know her sleep will be troubled. Van Helsing and Dr. Seward are still poring over Renfield's condition, while Quincy and Arthur prepare for tomorrow's search. The Count is out there, lurking in the shadows, plotting his next move. We are closing in on him, but the closer we get, the more perilous our journey becomes. I pray that our strength will hold, that we will have the courage to see this through. For Mina's sake, for all of humanity's sake, we must prevail. Chapter 20, Jonathan Harker's Journal. 7th October evening. The day has been long, filled with both grim discovery and unrelenting determination. Every step forward feels like a victory, yet each brings us closer to a danger we cannot fully comprehend. This morning, we gathered once more in Dr. Seward's study to chart our next course of action. Van Helsing, as ever, took the lead, his wisdom and resolve guiding us like a beacon. Mina, pale but steadfast, contributed her careful observations and maps, which have become our most reliable tools in tracking the Count's movements. Mina's struggle. I find myself increasingly tormented by the changes in Mina. She tries to remain her usual self, kind, diligent, and fiercely intelligent, but the shadow over her grows darker with each passing day. Van Helsing asked her more questions about the strange connection she feels to the Count. Though reluctant at first, she described sensing his presence during the night, as though he were calling to her from the depths of her dreams. She shivered as she spoke, and I could see the fear in her eyes. Van Helsing grew grim. The bond between them deepens, but it is not unbreakable, he said. We must act swiftly, for Mina's strength is not infinite, yet her courage gives us hope. Her courage indeed humbles me. Even as I see her struggle, she insists on helping us. Her insights have proven invaluable, and though I wish she would rest, I cannot deny the vital role she plays in this battle. Destroying another lair. In the afternoon, Arthur, Quincy, and I set out with Van Helsing to locate yet another of the Count's hiding places. The address Mina had deduced led us to a decrepit house in a long abandoned part of the city. The building was crumbling, its windows shattered, and the air within felt thick and oppressive. Inside, we found what we sought, 3 more boxes of earth, hidden in the cellar beneath rotting timbers. Van Helsing, with his usual solemnity, performed the rites of consecration. As the holy wafer burned into the soil, I could not help but feel the Count's fury, as though his presence hung in the very air around us. Each time we destroy one of his sanctuaries, we weaken him. Yet with each victory, my anxiety grows. The Count is cunning, and I fear the traps he may be setting for us. When we returned to the asylum, we were met with a startling scene. Renfield, who had been teetering between madness and lucidity, demanded to see Dr. Seward immediately. His tone was urgent, almost frantic, and for the first time I saw in his eyes not madness, but fear. "I must speak," he cried. "It is about her, about the lady you care for so much." We all exchanged looks, understanding instantly that he meant Mina. Renfield continued, his voice trembling. "He has been here, the master. I know he has, and he means her harm." His words chilled me to the bone. Renfield, despite his broken mind, seemed deeply attuned to the Count's presence. His warning confirmed what we all feared. Mina was in grave danger. Nightfall and vigil. As night fell, our anxiety grew. We decided that Mina should not sleep alone, and Van Helsing insisted on staying near her room. I volunteered as well, unwilling to let her out of my sight for even a moment. Mina seemed calm, though I know it is a mask she wears for our benefit. She kissed me goodnight and assured me she would be fine, but her eyes betrayed the fear she would not speak aloud. Now, as I write this entry by the dim light of a candle, the house feels oppressive, as though the very walls are closing in. The others are preparing for tomorrow's hunt, while Van Helsing keeps a watchful eye on Mina. The Count is out there, lurking in the darkness, his influence spreading like a shadow across our lives. But we will not falter. For Mina, for all of us, we must see this through to the end. Whatever may come, we will fight. Chapter 21, Jonathan Harker's Journal, 11th October, midnight. The events of this night have shaken me to my core. As I sit here writing, my hand trembles and my heart is heavy with dread. I can barely bring myself to record what has happened, yet I know I must. Each detail is important, for our enemy thrives in darkness, and only the truth can bring him into the light. Mina in danger. It began with an uneasy quiet. Mina had seemed unusually tired all day, her strength waning in ways none of us could ignore. Van Helsing watched her carefully, but his concern remained unspoken, as though voicing it would give our fears life. Tonight, as we all retired to our rooms, Van Helsing insisted on standing guard near Mina's door. I wanted to do the same, but he urged me to rest, promising that he would alert us at the first sign of danger. Reluctantly, I agreed, though sleep eluded me entirely. It was some time after midnight when a dreadful sound broke the silence. A low, guttural moan echoed through the house, followed by a faint, muffled cry. I sprang from my bed, my heart pounding, and rushed to Mina's room. I reached the door just as Van Helsing threw it open. What I saw inside froze me in place. Mina was lying on the bed, her face pale as death, her eyes wide with terror. Standing over her was the Count himself, a terrible and grotesque figure in the dim light. His lips were pressed to her throat and her blood stained his mouth. For a moment, I could not move. The sight was more monstrous than anything I had ever imagined, but then rage overtook me. With a cry, I lunged at him, my hands reaching for his throat. He turned to face me, his eyes burning with a wicked red light, and with a wave of his arm, he sent me sprawling to the floor as though I were a mere child. Van Helsing, too, advanced on him, holding up a crucifix that seemed to burn with holy fire. The Count recoiled, his face twisting in fury, and with a hiss like a serpent, he vanished into the night, leaving behind only the echo of his laughter. Mina's transformation. We turned to Mina, who was trembling and sobbing. Her skin was cold to the touch, and her eyes, once bright and full of life, now seemed clouded with some terrible shadow. She clung to me, her tears soaking my shirt as she whispered, "He forced me, he made me drink." Her words struck me like a blow. Van Helsing's face was grim as he examined her. The mark on her neck, the faint puncture wounds were proof enough of what had transpired. But worse still was her admission that she had been compelled from the Count himself. "He has bound her to him," Van Helsing said, his voice heavy with sorrow. "The link between them is stronger now. She is neither fully under his power nor fully free of it. We must act quickly if we are to save her." Mina's resolve. Despite her ordeal, Mina surprised us all with her strength. After some rest and a dose of medicine prepared by Van Helsing, she insisted on speaking with us. Her voice was steady, though her hands trembled as she held mine. "We cannot let this defeat us," she said. "We must use this bond to our advantage. If I am connected to him, then perhaps I can help you find him." Van Helsing nodded solemnly. "Indeed, this may be our only chance, but we must tread carefully. The risk to you, dear Mina, is great." She met his gaze without flinching. "I am willing to face any danger if it means ending this nightmare." Her courage fills me with both pride and despair. How can I allow her to bear such a burden? Yet I know she is right, preparing for the final battle. We have resolved to move forward with all haste. Van Helsing believes the Count is preparing to flee to his castle in Transylvania, where his power will be greatest. We must intercept him before he can escape, for once he is entrenched in his homeland, our task will become nearly impossible. As I write, the others are making preparations for our journey. Mina rests now, her face pale but peaceful. I cannot help but watch over her, my heart aching with a mixture of love and fear. The Count has taken much from us, but he has not broken us. We will pursue him to the ends of the earth if we must. For Mina's sake, and for the sake of all who might fall prey to his evil, we cannot fail. Jonathan Harker's Journal. Today has been a day unlike any other, filled with revelations, plans, and a sense of dread that I cannot shake. The shadow of Count Dracula hangs heavy over us, yet amidst the fear I cling to hope. A faint but persistent hope that we can end this nightmare. Mina's condition. Mina's bravery humbles me more each day. Despite the curse that links her to the Count, she remains resolute, refusing to yield to despair. The mark on her forehead, burned there by the holy wafer, is a constant reminder of the evil that has touched her. It pains me to see her bear this burden, but she wears it like a badge of honor, determined to fight this evil with us. Her condition, however, is troubling. At times she is herself, bright, clever, and full of resolve. But at other moments, a strange lethargy overtakes her, and she seems distant, as though the Count's influence tugs at her spirit. Even in those moments, she does not falter, insisting that she will aid us however she can. Mina's connection to Dracula. Mina's connection to Dracula. Van Helsed a bold and terrifying idea this morning. He believes that Mina's connection to the Count, forged by his vile curse, can be used against him. Through her, we might trace his movements and uncover his plans. The thought horrified me. How could we expose her to such danger? But Mina, ever courageous, agreed without hesitation. "If this is the price of defeating him," she said, her voice steady, "then I will pay it willingly." Van Helsing placed her in a hypnotic state. As she slipped into the trance, I watched her face change. Her breathing slowed, her expression grew calm, and her voice, when she spoke, was distant and monotone. "I see him," she said, her words sending a chill through me. "He is on a ship. The water is dark. The waves are high. He is in a box, in the hold. He sleeps, but he is aware he is going home." Her words confirmed our worst fears. The Count is fleeing to Transylvania, returning to his castle where his strength is greatest. He travels by sea, his coffin hidden among the cargo. Our plan. With this knowledge, we convene to plan our next move. Time is our enemy now. If the Count reaches his castle, his power will grow beyond our ability to fight him. We must intercept him before he can reach the safety of his homeland. Van Helsing has divided us into two groups. Quincy and Arthur will take the overland route, racing along the river paths the Count is likely to follow once he leaves the ship. Van Helsing, Mina, and I will board a ship, traveling directly toward the Black Sea to intercept him before he lands. Mina will guide us. Her connection to the Count is our only means of tracking him, but the thought of her enduring this fills me with dread. Yet she insists that she must be part of the fight. I will not let him win, she told me tonight, her eyes fierce with determination. Not over me, and not over any of us. The night's reflection. As I write this, Mina sleeps beside me. Her face is serene, though I know her dreams are far from peaceful. The crucifix around her neck gleams faintly in the candlelight, a small but potent symbol of protection. The night outside is quiet, but my thoughts are anything but. I find myself wrestling with fear. Fear for Mina, for our friends, and for the task that lies ahead. The Count is cunning, ruthless, and more powerful than any of us can truly comprehend. But we have something he does not, the strength of love and unity. It is strange to think that such a simple human thing as love could stand against a creature as ancient and malevolent as Dracula. Yet I believe it will. Tomorrow, we set out. The road ahead is dark and fraught with peril, but we will not falter. For Mina, for all of us, we will see this through to the end. Jonathan Harker's journal. 6th of November. This day has been one of the most harrowing of my life, and yet, amidst the horrors, a glimmer of hope has emerged. The pursuit of Count Dracula presses on with relentless urgency. Every hour matters now, and the stakes have never felt higher. Mina's strength and sacrifice, Mina continues to amaze me with her courage. Despite the dark curse linking her to the Count, she faces each moment with grace and strength. The mark upon her forehead, that cruel scar left by the sacred wafer, is a constant reminder of the danger she is in. Yet, she insists on being part of the fight, even as her condition grows more troubling. Van Helsing placed her under hypnosis again this morning. Her voice, detached and distant, described the Count's movements. I see darkness, the sound of waves. He is in his box, silent, waiting, but aware. Her descriptions guide us like a compass, pointing us toward his destination. Every detail she provides fuels our determination, though I cannot help but feel the weight of what this is costing her. The chase. We are split into two groups now, moving in tandem to intercept the Count. Quincy and Arthur ride ahead by land, following the river routes the Count is likely to take. Meanwhile, Van Helsing, Mina, and I press onward by water, hoping to cut him off before he reaches his castle. Our journey is grueling. The cold bites at us, and the river's currents are treacherous, but we cannot afford to slow down. Time is our enemy, and every hour brings the Count closer to safety. Van Helsing and I take turns watching over Mina, ensuring she is never left unguarded. Her connection to the Count is both our greatest asset and our greatest vulnerability. I dread what might happen if he exerts his influence over her again. A growing darkness. As we draw nearer to the Count's homeland, I feel the oppressive weight of his presence growing stronger. It is as though the land itself bends to his will, darkening the skies and chilling the air. Mina, too, seems to feel it. She grows weaker with each passing day, her face pale and her eyes shadowed. Despite this, her resolve remains unshaken. She insists on helping us, even as Van Helsing and I urge her to rest. Her strength humbles me, and I vow to protect her at all costs. Preparations tonight. As we camped by the riverbank, Van Helsing and I discussed our plan for when we finally confront the Count. The professor is steadfast in his belief that we must destroy him utterly, drive a stake through his heart, cut off his head, and burn his remains. It is a grim task, but there is no other way. The Count is a creature of pure evil, and if we fail, he will continue to spread his darkness across the world. Mina listened quietly as we spoke, her expression calm but resolute. She knows what must be done, and though it pains me to think of her witnessing such horrors, I know she would not have it any other way. Reflection. As I write this, the fire crackles softly beside me, casting flickering shadows across the tent. Mina sleeps fitfully, her breathing shallow and her brow furrowed. I wish I could ease her burden, but all I can do is stand by her side and fight for her. The night feels heavy with anticipation. I cannot shake the feeling that the end is drawing near. Whether it will be our triumph or our doom, I cannot say. But one thing is certain, we will not rest until the Count is defeated. For Mina, for Lucy, for all the lives he has destroyed, we will see this through to the bitter end. Jonathan Harker's journal. 8 November. The road ahead grows darker, yet our resolve remains unshaken. Every moment we press forward brings us closer to the Count, though the weight of what lies ahead presses heavily on my heart. Mina, ever steadfast, continues to be our light amidst the shadows, though I fear for her more than ever. A shared understanding. Mina insisted on a meeting this morning. As we gathered around her, her face calm but pale, she spoke with clarity that both moved and terrified me. If the worst should happen, she said, her voice unwavering, and I become what the Count wishes me to be, you must not hesitate. You must do what is necessary, even if it means ending my life. Her words struck me like a blade to the heart. I could hardly bear to hear her say such things, but her eyes were filled with a quiet determination. Van Helsing nodded solemnly, his respect for her evident. He assured her that we would do whatever was necessary to free her soul from the Count's curse. I said nothing, for I could not trust my voice to remain steady. The thought of losing her is unbearable, but I know she speaks the truth. The journey continues. We continued our pursuit, each passing hour bringing us deeper into the Count's territory. The land itself feels hostile, as if it conspires against us. The air is colder, the nights darker, and even the animals seem to sense the evil that looms over this place. Van Helsing and I have taken turns keeping watch over Mina. Her connection to the Count grows stronger as we near his lair. At times, she appears distant, as if lost in some unseen struggle. And yet, she remains our guide, her hypnotic trances offering us glimpses of the Count's movements. Her latest vision was particularly chilling. She described him traveling in his coffin, carried by his minions as they draw ever closer to the castle. The thought of him, so near yet still out of reach, fills me with a sense of urgency and dread. Preparations for the final confrontation. Tonight, Van Helsing shared his plans for the final confrontation. He spoke of the ancient rites and rituals needed to destroy the Count once and for all. The crucifixes, the holy wafers, the stake, all are prepared, waiting for the moment we face him. Quincy and Arthur are relentless in their pursuit on horseback, their courage unyielding. We keep in constant contact through notes left at strategic points, coordinating our efforts. Every step we take feels like a race against time, and every delay could mean the Count's victory. Mina listens intently to our plans, her input invaluable. Her mind, sharp and insightful, even under the strain of her condition, has been our greatest ally. Yet I cannot ignore the changes in her. The mark on her forehead seems to darken, and at times her expression takes on a faraway look, as if the Count's influence is pulling at her. A moment of reflection. As I write this, the firelight flickers weakly against the encroaching darkness. Mina sleeps fitfully beside me, her face pale and drawn. Van Helsing keeps watch, his eyes ever vigilant. I find myself reflecting on how far we have come and the sacrifices we have made. Lucy's memory haunts me, her life cut short by the very evil we now face. I think of Mina, her life hanging in the balance, and I feel a surge of determination. The Count will not win. He cannot. Too much has been lost and many lives hang in the balance. Whatever it takes, we will see this through to the end. For Mina, for Lucy, for all the innocent souls he has taken, we will destroy him. Jonathan Harker's journal. The cold grows sharper as we close in on the Count's lair. Each passing hour feels like a lifetime, and every step we take is laden with the weight of what lies ahead. Our journey through this harsh and desolate landscape has been grueling, but none of us falter. We press on, driven by a shared purpose, to destroy the monster who has brought so much pain and suffering into our lives. Mina's unwavering resolve. Mina's condition continues to worry us all. The changes in her demeanor grow more pronounced. Her connection to the Count seems stronger as we draw nearer to him. At times she appears distant, her eyes clouded with some internal struggle, and yet she remains steadfast, her resolve unshaken. Today, she spoke to us with an eerie calmness that sent a chill through my heart. "Jonathan," she said, her voice soft but steady, "you must promise me that if the worst should happen, you will do what needs to be done. If I become like him, you must not hesitate to set my soul free." I could hardly bear to hear her say such things, but I knew she spoke the truth. Van Helsing reassured her, his voice kind but firm, that we would honor her wishes. My heart aches at the thought, but I know that she is prepared to make the ultimate sacrifice if it means defeating the Count. The chase narrows. Our pursuit has been relentless. We track the Count's movements with an almost unnatural precision thanks to Mina's visions. Under hypnosis, she reveals glimpses of his surroundings. The swaying of the carriage carrying his coffin, the sound of rushing water, the cold howling winds of the mountains. We know now that he is heading toward his castle with desperate speed. His servants, those loyal to his dark will, aid him in his flight, but we are not far behind. Quincy and Arthur, ever determined, ride ahead on horseback, leaving signs of their progress for us to follow. Van Helsing and I remain with Mina, protecting her as best we can. The terrain grows harsher with each passing mile. The mountains loom around us like silent sentinels, their peaks shrouded in mist. The snow underfoot slows our progress, but it cannot diminish our resolve. The shadow of the castle. As night falls, the site of Castle Dracula comes into view, its dark silhouette rising against the stormy sky. My heart clenches at the sight of it. This is the place where my nightmares began, the place where I first encountered the true horror of the Count. Van Helsing gathers us together to discuss our plan for the final assault. His knowledge of ancient rituals and protections has been our greatest weapon against the Count's evil. We will strike at sunrise, when the Count's powers are at their weakest. The crucifix, the holy wafer, the sacred stake, all are ready. Mina listens intently, her face pale but determined. I can see the strain in her eyes, but she does not falter. Her bravery humbles me. A moment of resolve tonight. As I write this entry, the fire flickers weakly against the encroaching darkness. Mina sleeps fitfully beside me, her breathing shallow and her face drawn. Van Helsing keeps watch, his gaze fixed on the horizon. I feel a deep sense of foreboding, but also a fierce determination. This journey has tested us in ways I could never have imagined. We have lost so much, Lucy, our innocence, and a part of ourselves. But we have gained something too, an unbreakable bond forged in the fires of this struggle. We are united in our purpose. The Count must be destroyed. There is no other way. For Mina, for Lucy, for all the lives he has touched with his darkness, we will see this through to the end. If this should be my last entry, let it be a testament to our resolve. We will not falter. We will not fail. Have Jonathan Harker's journal. The 5th of November. The final day has arrived, and with it, a storm of emotions I can barely contain. Hope, dread, and an iron determination churn within me as we prepare for the confrontation that will either free us or doom us forever. The final pursuit. Van Helsing's strategies have brought us here, but it is Mina's remarkable connection to the Count that guides us now. Under hypnosis, she described the final leg of his journey, the sound of creaking wood, the rush of water, and the distant thunder of wolves. The Count, ensconced within his cursed soil, speeds toward Castle Dracula in a desperate bid for safety. We are close behind. Quincy and Arthur, riding tirelessly on horseback, scout ahead, marking the trail for Van Helsing and me. Mina rides with me in the carriage, her face pale but calm. Her strength amazes me. Despite the growing darkness within her, she remains unwavering in her resolve to see this through. The road grows rougher as we near the Borgo Pass. The wind howls through the narrow valleys, carrying with it the distant, mournful cries of wolves. The snow falls in heavy flakes, obscuring the path ahead, but we press on, knowing that every moment counts. Reaching the castle. As the sun begins its descent, the shadowy outline of Castle Dracula emerges on the horizon. My heart pounds at the sight of it. The memories of my first encounter with its looming walls flood back. My fear, my helplessness, and the unimaginable horrors I faced within. Van Helsing signals for us to halt. We must strike at the moment of sunset, he says, his voice steady but laced with urgency. The Count will be at his weakest then, vulnerable before the night grants him his full power. We make our preparations in silence. The sacred objects, the crucifixes, holy water, and stakes are laid out before us. Each of us carries a grim determination, knowing that this is our only chance. The final battle. As the sun dips below the horizon, the Count's carriage appears, flanked by his gypsy servants. They drive furiously, their faces set in grim determination. Quincy and Arthur charge forward, their horses galloping at full speed to intercept the convoy. The clash is chaotic and violent. The gypsies, loyal to their dark master, fight with savage ferocity, but we are equally determined. I leap from the carriage, holy symbols in hand, and rush toward the coffin where I know the Count lies. Mina, despite her weakened state, remains by my side. She holds a crucifix high, her voice firm as she chants prayers under her breath. The sight of her, radiant in her courage, fills me with renewed strength. Van Helsing confronts the gypsies with his unwavering resolve, driving them back with the power of the sacred symbols. Quincy and Arthur fight valiantly, their weapons cutting through the chaos. Finally, we reach the coffin. With trembling hands, I pry open the lid, revealing the Count within. His face is pale and serene, as if in a mockery of peace. But his eyes, even in this state, seem to burn with a terrible malice. Without hesitation, I raise the stake, and with all the strength I can muster, drive it into his heart. The end of the Count. The reaction is immediate and violent. The Count's body convulses, his features twisting into a grotesque mask of agony. A terrible wail fills the air, echoing through the mountains like the cry of a dying beast. Then, as if consumed by the very forces of nature, his form crumbles into dust, carried away by the wind. The gypsies flee, their master destroyed, leaving us standing in the snow. A profound silence falls over the scene, broken only by the soft whispers of the wind. Hatch Quincy's sacrifice. It is only then that we realize the cost of our victory. Quincy lies in the snow, gravelly wounded. He smiles weakly as we gather around him, his eyes filled with a quiet pride. "It was worth it," he says, his voice faint but steady. "The world is free of him now. We try to save him, but it is too late." With a final breath, Quincy passes, his sacrifice sealing our triumph. A new dawn. As the first rays of dawn break over the mountains, the curse that has haunted us is lifted. Mina's face, so pale and shadowed before, begins to regain its color. The connection between her and the Count is severed, his dark influence gone. We bury Quincy with heavy hearts, his bravery and friendship etched forever in our memories. As I write this, we prepare to leave this accursed place and return to our lives. The shadow of the Count has been banished, but the scars of this journey will remain with us always. We have lost much, friends, innocence, and a part of ourselves, but we have gained something too. We have proven the strength of the human spirit, the power of love and friendship to overcome even the darkest of evils. The nightmare is over. We are free. Jonathan Harker's journal, 6th of November. The long, harrowing journey has come to its end. I write now with trembling hands, my heart heavy with the weight of both loss and triumph. The events of the past hours remain vivid, and though they seem almost like the visions of a fevered mind, they are undeniably real, the race against time. We had little rest last night as we drew closer to Castle Dracula. Mina, pale and calm, guided us with startling clarity. Her connection to the Count allowed her to sense his movements, his intentions. Under Van Helsing's careful hypnosis, she described the Count's progress through the Carpathians, carried in his coffin by the loyal Sgani who guarded him fiercely. The snow had begun to fall in earnest by the time we reached the Borgo Pass. Each gust of wind howled like a wolf, filling the air with an ominous tension. The horses stumbled on the icy paths, and our breaths came out in clouds of frost, but we pressed on. Every moment was precious. Van Helsing, Arthur, and Quincy were relentless in their resolve. The sacred items, crucifixes, holy water, and stakes were ready, their presence a small comfort against the looming dread. Mina sat beside me, her face a picture of quiet determination. Her strength, even as the darkness sought to consume her, filled me with awe. Her reaching the castle. As the first light of dawn touched the sky, we spotted the Count's convoy. The Sgani were driving hard, their horses straining against the weight of the cart carrying the cursed soil and the coffin. The castle loomed ahead, its jagged towers silhouetted against the pale light. "We must intercept them before they reach the gates," Van Helsing urged. Arthur and Quincy galloped ahead on horseback, their figures barely visible through the swirling snow. Van Helsing, Mina, and I followed in the carriage, the wheels jolting over the uneven terrain. The final confrontation. We caught up with the convoy just as they reached the castle's shadow. Arthur and Quincy rode directly into the Sgani, their weapons flashing in the weak light. Chaos erupted. The Sgani fought fiercely, their loyalty to the Count unwavering. Van Helsing and I leapt from the carriage, holy symbols in hand, to join the fray. Amid the tumult, my eyes locked on the cart. The coffin was there, partially buried under the snow and soil. Mina, though weak, stepped forward, holding a crucifix high. Her presence seemed to stagger the Sgani, who hesitated for the briefest moment. It was all we needed. Quincy, ever fearless, broke through their ranks and reached the cart. He heaved the coffin to the ground, ignoring the wounds he suffered from their weapons. Blood stained the snow, but he did not falter. Van Helsing and I reached him, and together we pried open the coffin. There lay the Count, his body seemingly lifeless, yet his face bore an expression of malevolent cunning, even in repose. Repose. The moment was upon us. As the sun rose higher, its rays touched the Count's form. I raised the stake, my hands steady despite the storm of emotions within me. With all the strength I could muster, I drove it into his heart. Hash the Count's end. A sound like the roar of 1,000 storms filled the air as the Count's body convulsed. His eyes opened wide in a final, defiant glare, but they soon softened into an expression almost of relief. His form crumbled to dust, scattering on the wind. The Scani, seeing their master destroyed, fled in terror, leaving us alone in the snowy silence. Quincy's sacrifice. It was then that I saw Quincy collapse, his hand pressed against a wound on his side. Blood flowed freely, staining the pristine snow. We rushed to him, but the injury was fatal. He smiled faintly as we knelt around him. "It's done," he whispered. "The devil is gone." Mina held his hand, tears streaming down her face. "You saved us all," she said, her voice breaking. With his final breath, Quincy looked toward the sunrise. "So worth it," he murmured before closing his eyes forever. Aftermath. The castle stood silent and foreboding, its dark power broken. The snow continued to fall, covering the scene of our battle like a shroud. We buried Quincy there, beneath the shadow of the Borgo Pass, marking his grave with a simple cross. The loss of such a brave and noble friend weighs heavily on my heart, but his sacrifice was not in vain. Mina's color began to return as the day wore on, the shadow of the Count's influence lifting from her. She is free now, as are we all. As we prepare to leave this cursed land, I am filled with a strange mixture of grief and gratitude. We have suffered greatly, but we have triumphed over a darkness that sought to consume the world. Quincy's memory will live on in our hearts, a testament to the strength of friendship and the power of human courage. The nightmare is over, and though scars remain, we have reclaimed our lives. We are free. Jonathan Harker's journal. 7th of November. The nightmare is truly behind us now. As I pen these words sitting beside Mina in the quiet of an inn far from Castle Dracula, I am overwhelmed by the enormity of what we have endured and what we have overcome. Our journey away from the castle was solemn. The snow that had covered the battlefield the day before now seemed almost like a blanket of peace, hiding the scars of the struggle. We left Quincy's grave in that lonely spot, marked with a simple cross carved into the earth. It is a resting place befitting a hero, surrounded by the wild beauty of the Carpathians beneath the ever-watching heavens. Mina's recovery. As we moved farther from the castle, I watched Mina closely. Each mile seemed to bring her further into the light. The dark shadow that had clung to her, binding her to the Count, began to dissipate. Her cheeks regained their color, and her eyes lost the haunted look they had carried for so long. Her first smile, a small, tentative thing, came as we crossed the border into safer lands. It was like the first ray of sunlight breaking through storm clouds. Van Helsing has assured me that Mina is now free of Dracula's curse. His destruction severed the connection between them, and his blood no longer holds any sway over her. The scar on her forehead, the mark of her trials, remains, but it no longer bears the ominous weight it once did. Final reflections. Now that it is over, I find myself reflecting on the events that have unfolded. Dracula is gone. His evil has been wiped from this earth, and the world is safer for it. Yet I cannot help but wonder how many lives he touched, how many stories of despair and darkness remain untold. We were fortunate, though not without loss. Quincy gave his life for this cause, and his bravery will never be forgotten. He faced death with such courage, such unwavering resolve, that his memory will inspire me for all the days I have left. Arthur and Dr. Seward have returned to England with heavy hearts, but also with a sense of closure. They, too, will carry scars, both seen and unseen, but I know they will find peace in time. Van Helsing, ever the wise and compassionate guide, has reminded us that though we have vanquished a great evil, the world is not without other threats. His words, though somber, are a reminder that vigilance must remain. moving forward. As for Mina and me, we look forward to reclaiming our lives. The darkness is behind us now, and though it has left its mark, it has also strengthened the bond we share. We will return to England soon, to the home we dreamed of while enduring the horrors of Dracula's castle. There, surrounded by the familiar comforts of normalcy, we will begin anew. Mina has asked me to keep this journal, not as a reminder of the terror we faced, but as a testament to the strength of human spirit and the power of love and friendship. She believes, as I do, that our story is one worth preserving, not for the darkness it reveals, but for the light that overcame it. And so, I write these final words with a heart full of hope. Epilogue. The sun sets now, painting the sky with hues of gold and crimson. Mina sits beside me, her hand in mine, her gaze fixed on the horizon. Life, fragile and fleeting as it may be, is a gift. And though we have faced the depths of despair, we have emerged stronger, ready to embrace whatever comes next. This chapter of our lives is closed. The darkness has been vanquished, and the future stretches out before us, bright and unbroken. Thank you all for spending the past 2 hours with me. I hope you've had a relaxing and peaceful time. Don't forget to like and subscribe to stay updated with my latest videos. For now, I wish you a good night and sweet dreams. See you in the next video.